In the wake of the housing crisis, Warren Buffett summed up his views on home ownership in a 2009 letter to his shareholders. Quote, "Putting people into homes, though a desirable goal, shouldn't be our country's primary objective. Keeping them in their homes should be that ambition."
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. This keeps coming up. People including the idea of home ownership as part of the American dream. Not sure where we got there. I get the idea of having a shelter, an affordable shelter over your head as being a good goal. Christine, is it because we thought that home ownership means financial success later? Did we move from home as a shelter to home as investment as a society? I wonder whether that's what the issue is.
Well, absolutely we did. And when you talk to people now, they say, wait, this is the middle class's biggest investment. This is more than just moving out of a home you can't afford. This is the loss of their investment and so much of their savings. And very, very important people, some of whom who have Nobel Prizes, said you didn't have to have savings if you had money in your house or in the stock market. We know how that worked out.
Now look what happened. Richard Florida is a good friend of our show. He's also the author of a book called The Great Reset: New Ways of Living and Working How New Ways of Living and Working Drive Post-Crash Prosperity. He's got a view on this. He's joining us from Toronto, Richard, about the idea that we really have as a society, as a government in the United States, as banks, pushed the idea of owning your own home. Here's the surprise. Christine and I often talk about this. We don't have home ownership rates that are substantially higher than major industrialized countries that don't foist home ownership on people.
No, we don't. Our home ownership rate is actually less than the home ownership rate in Canada and many European countries. And what happened, as you guys were just talking about, we increased the rate of home ownership after the Depression and during the New Deal and in the post-war era because it was good for our economy. People who bought those single-family homes, that created demand for the cars and the refrigerators, the television sets, the washers and dryers coming off the assembly line. But it's no longer a powerful stimulant for the economy in an idea and knowledge-driven time.
And for the first time in my lifetime, you hear people saying, you know, maybe it's better, and maybe it's better for your family for you to rent and increase your cash flow. Is that how more families should be thinking, and is that good for the economy?
Well, I think at a time where lots of economies are hurting and folks are out of a job, if you need to move to where economic opportunity is and you're stuck with a mortgage that you're underwater on and you can't move, what do you do? So I think in an economy that requires flexibility, where the key to our economy has been a flexible labor market, we need a lot more residential mobility to achieve that. And for many people, not all people, some people should continue to own, but for many people, particularly those starting their careers or in uncertain labor markets or in uncertain jobs, it's a better idea for them to rent.
In other words, owning the house keeps you somewhere when, in fact, maybe for your prosperity and your career or your family, you should be somewhere else. You bring up something interesting, Richard. You actually feel that maybe we should do away with this, the credit that you get on mortgage interest, so as not to have a government that encourages
That's not popular.
Shut up. What are you doing? You're blowing it.
This is a peanut gallery here. But, Richard, the fact is...
I think...
Go ahead.
Yeah. I think lots of economists agree that we've overly subsidized housing and in doing so distorted our economy. Our economy, according to virtually every economist who studies this, has overinvested in housing, and that capital that went to housing and speculation and to inflating the price of land could have been used, should have been used, and has to be used now to build the new industries and new technologies that will power our future. So the hundreds of billions of dollars that we subsidize home ownership may be good for someone who wants to get into a house, but it's bad for our economy now as a whole.
Richard Florida is the author of The Great Reset: How New Ways of Living and Working Drive Post-Crash Prosperity. Richard, thanks for joining us. You know, Ali, I got to tell you, that's the most beloved tax break in American history. It's like $580 billion or something.
And it strikes me that our peanut gallery didn't like that idea.
No, I mean, it's an economic stimulus every year just for being a homeowner.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think they could ever get rid of it.
I heard Hal carrying on about this. Was that you heckling?
It was both of us. Both of us. He's got a house and I've got a house. You're blowing it. But there's also a thing that, you know, Thomas Jefferson said, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, houses make people happy. Houses have an enormous symbolic value. My family lost our house in 1958. We lost our house. We had to move to a housing project. My dad was finished. That was it. The symbolism of losing your house, of being, you know, tossed out into the street was so powerful it basically destroyed his life. So I know from personal experience how important it is to have a house. But houses are also important because they stabilize societies. People take care of their houses. You know, people feel better when they own a house. And one other thing, I don't care what any economist says, buying a house is probably the only good investment the average person will ever make.
I would say that there's been a generational shift, though, that we do have to pay attention to, in that if we over-focus on a home with a plot of land, with a yard, and a large dog,
no dog.
This is
Leave the dog
yeah,
out.
I know.
We've established Joe does not want a dog.
It's important to my analogy, though, is that now, we have an entire generation of people, I think my age, maybe Max's age, that really were brought up on the Friends loft, that our idea, and the dogs have gotten a lot smaller, they actually fit in the apartment, that there's this shift also, not so much away from ownership, but ownership of a house with a white picket fence. That idea has shifted.
You haven't been to Dixie, and you haven't been to places like Philadelphia and South Jersey where people live in houses.
I've been everywhere in this country. No, seriously. I've been everywhere in this country. I'm a touring stand-up comedian. I'm literally in every market. And I'm telling you, when you go to Toledo and they're building lofts downtown, right, when they don't have the money for the sprawl outside, that's a shift.
Homeownership, guys, whether it's an apartment or a house, the idea is, I think the upside is, it's an aggressive savings plan, especially for a consumer-based culture that we live in, where people aren't saving enough money. I know we're going to be talking about that a little bit later.
Right.
You're forcing yourself to save money that would otherwise be spent on housing anyway.
If the house doesn't fall 57 or 60% in value, and you need to unload it in 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years to retire. Guys, don't go away, because this is just getting hot. We want to continue all these angles.